evening, everyone, the ones here and those joining us from home. My name is Noor Anna Abdullah. I am a queer person. My pronouns are she, they. I am active in all kind of human rights, anti-war and peace causes. I'm also affiliated with Prisma Group, which is a foundation that's supporting trans and queer people with Islamic background and bicultural as well. I'm also affiliated with Prisma Group, tonight's program is the 12th edition in Inclusief Nieuw-West series in collaboration with Prisma Group Foundation. So I would like to start with my guests, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Nesara. I'm a transgender woman from India. I run an organization called Transgender India back home. I help transgender people back home to understand transition because it's a very complex journey, especially when you are in a very, society that is not very trans-friendly. So that's what I do. I moved to Netherlands 5 years ago, and I live here since then. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawar.
Hi everyone. My name is Hawar Arkawazi. I'm from Iraqi Kurdistan. I'm currently a guest of Shelter City and Justice and Peace Organization in The Hague. I'm a trans woman myself. I'm did I just say trans woman? Yes. Yeah, I said that, okay. I'm coming from a humanitarian civil society organization in the past 10 plus years. And like I said, I'm a guest on a human rights program, only made it 3 months ago. Happy to be here and thanks for inviting me.
Hello everyone, my name is Ariel and I'm actually an activist and I'm activist in HIV where my background is actually, I'm a phlebotomist by training, and I also used to run and operate, or I used to operate as the program manager for a private clinic for LGBTQI plus community in Jamaica, and now presently in the Netherlands, I'm a member of the House of Hopeless, and that's a drag house, but an activist drag house where our focus is on human rights, body positive, sex positive, and PrEP. And I am also a member of Global Black Gay Men Connect, where I am on the board for Europe. And so what we do there is look at policies that government makes in terms of where there need to be equality and proper accessibility towards HIV prevention tools such as PrEP. So I am a model slash performer slash dancer. I perform in the Netherlands, in festivals, in clubs, and I also do runway models for various different brands and organizations. I'm also active member from Extinction Rebellion, where I organize and we organize a fashion show for a brand called Nopolis, and with that there is an iconic dress called Shell Must Fall, and so basically that's Ariel in a nutshell. And I'm a trans woman, if I didn't say that.
Thank you.
Salam, everyone. My name is Safa, and I'm a transdisciplinary artist living in Netherlands. And my endeavors as an artist is to, well, it's different, many things. But mainly I'm trying to find a performative way of translating the Persian poetry of Rumi and Hafiz with incorporating intersectionality and queer linguistics to explain this transcendental spiritual poetry can be used to convey the experiences of a queer person living in all times, especially current times.
Thank you, everyone. So for this evening, the topic is queerness throughout history, and through that topic we will know more about the cultures and the background of everybody here. And yeah, so let's start. Can you tell me a bit about the queerness and trans identities within your culture or the culture you grew up in? I start with you, Ariella.
Thank you for asking that question, and as I should say, thank you for having me. My understanding of queerness and trans identity and trans experiences in terms of where I am from the Caribbean. I'm from Jamaica originally, and in Jamaica, my 29 years of living there, I've only met one trans woman in my entire life there, and still I did not understand what's the difference between she being a woman versus she being trans, and until I get to the Netherlands, where I get the opportunity to explore without feeling threatened in terms of my life being threatened. In Jamaica, it's not so easy to find the information because the information is not being taught. And the organization that I was a member of, Jamaica AIDS Support for Life, and JFLAG, in which is under the umbrella of Jamaica AIDS Support for Life, where it's the first gay organization in the Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean, and the largest within the English-speaking Caribbean. We did not have such knowledge to share. So for us in that side of the world, it was mainly gay men and lesbians. And then we have these small groups boxes and labels that we will give people, such as effeminate, sissies, or butch for more masculine girl, even though it may be that the fact that they are becoming trans men, we didn't know. And the fact that I was super effeminate, I was a walking rainbow through Kingston, but I didn't know that I was trans because the knowledge was not given. And also we are now catching up with the rest of the world in terms of with technology, in terms of social media and all of those stuff. And yes, thanks for social media, a lot of people are now be able to be more educated and be informed to make informed decisions about who they are. And that's it.
Thank you. Question about that. Not having the knowledge did not hinder you from being who you are. So
No.
you knew who you are, and
I figured out who I was from I was around 2 years. I knew that I was very effeminate, and I always want to be the girl down the street with that big butt. I don't know why I wanted just that massive ass, but yeah, that was how I see myself. And growing up in Kingston, it was difficult to be yourself as an individual and to actually explore who you are. However, we have a saying in Jamaica: you can be from a particular geographic, but you don't necessarily have to be off that geographic. And that's what happened with me. I was brought up into a community where it's quite homophobic, quite hostile to everything. There's a lot of taboos. There's taboo, religious taboo. There is being just, even with work, if you work on the garbage truck, there's a taboo for it. Oh, you're dirty, you're a feast. Everything once it's totally out of the scope of religion, then you have no place. So for me as an individual, what we do in Jamaica is something similar to this, where that's how we started developing as queer and gay people in Jamaica. We have these meetings that we have once every week that we call GLABCOM. And what we do in GLABCOM, we look at different topics that people are struggling with. And we have that as a discussion day. And we discuss that topic to the fullest.
We'll be back to that. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we'll be back to that question because I really want to know what you're doing in your community or growing up in Jamaica. What was your participation in spreading awareness, or at least the knowledge that you knew or you had back then? Thank you. Hawari? Same questions to you?
Yeah, I think, like Ariel mentioned, I'm from Iraq and Kurdistan. So I grew up around a very heteronormative, kind of also cis dominant society that there was really not a lot of space. But I guess in my experience, I already knew, even I didn't have the language for it. Even I had no words or no terminologies in terms of my sexuality and in terms of my gender identity. I think I resonate so much with your example when you say, like, I always wanted to be that girl in the neighborhood. I always, when I looked back in the mirror, I saw a woman or a girl, a little girl. I never seen like my sex identity and my gender identity, they don't match. And I think I started questioning why the world is the way it is, why everybody look like each other and they're fine with the way they are except me. So of course, as a younger me, I struggled I know it, I have the feeling, but then I cannot show it because like it's a taboo topic and you don't get to ask questions. And in a society where even the language is not there, the vocabulary is not there. Yeah. So of course, it took me a while, and then that's when I did my reading by questioning all of this, like why the world is like this, what makes me different. So of course, I think this idea of living in closet, and it is a reality that unfortunately a lot of queer people today now have to live that. And I think as much as it's hard and it's dark as well, it's also empowering because you get to ask questions that, you know, straight hetero people do not ask those questions. And like, that's super clear about that. Not in a negative way, but we do ask not just about our gender identity or our sexual orientation, we do ask about why the world is not fair as well. Like, at least in my case, I was like also questioning like why women is also treated differently in my society. So you get to ask a lot of questions in so many range of other issues that it's beyond your gender identity and sexuality. But once I did my reading, once I opened my eyes and I had to kind of read through other cultures, I'm a Kurdish, and a Kurdish is also a minority. So I'm a minority of a minority within the Iraq and Middle East. But then once I did all of those readings, I started to know about, actually in the history of Middle East, there is a whole idea of people's not being heteronormative, not being binary. And if anything, people were much more fluid. And we have, we had a conversation between me and Safa before. Like we have a poet, Abu Nawas is a famous Middle Eastern poet, and he has a lot of poems, homoerotic poems, and it was publicly received, not in a bad way, to be honest, even though now people actually disagree if it was actually, homoerotic or relation expressions. But if you read through it, you can see this is actually written for the same sex. And then we have leaders like Harun ibn Rashid. This was one of the very famous leaders of the Arab world, and they were openly talking about that. So there is this conflict, I guess, when in the reality, unfortunately, because of the oppression and the systemic oppression that my part of the world have actually experienced, those were erased from the history or until the time I was born and even before me. But they were never new to my roots. And then now knowing that, I feel like very empowered that this was just brought up upon us, and this was not something new to, the history of the humanity as well, but especially in that part of the world. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. So from Jamaica to the Middle East and now to Naysara, India, can you tell us about the queers and transgenders, or perhaps they have another name? Yeah.
So queerness is as old as humanity in the land that we now call India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. We have a tradition. If I go thousands of years back, then we have Hindu mythology that came from the area where Indus Valley flew, right? So India comes from Indus Valley, and Hindu comes from Indus Valley, Hindu. So initially we still have this, in Hinduism, we have the triology, the three great powers, that is creator, maintainer, and the destroyer. That's how the cycle goes, And the creator also has a form where he is a non-binary trans person. He's called Ardhanarishwar, means a person who's half man, half woman. So, and again, the maintainer transitions to become, his name is Vishnu, and he transitions to become Mohini. So the concept of transition, non-binariness, and even homosexuality, everything is deep engraved in our religion. Not some, we have like 33 million gods, but not some peripheral god, but the core ideology, the trinity of Hinduism is trans, is queer. Now, when we come to a little more modern history, that is when the Mughals came, because India is a mixed pot of all the cultures, So we have Hinduism, we have Islam, we have, name it, we have every religion in India. So when it comes to Islam, then we, in that era, we have this culture called as the Hijra culture, which is, in those days, it was not possible for trans people to make their own children. So they were more, trans people were people who were more into introspection about human life, human society. They were more knowledgeable people. And the word hijra comes from the word hijr, means a journey. Hijr itself means a journey. It's a journey of knowledge. It's a journey of understanding our existence. So that's where trans people sat during Mughal era. They were in the Mughal courts. They were in the scientific communities, because they were the people who didn't have to worry about families. They were the people who thought more about human society, the ways we live in. And also, trans people made their own communities then, because since we are social beings, we need communities, as in we need sisters, we need mothers, we need children, we need people to take care of us. So we have this, in the Hijra community, we have this system of mother, daughter, and sister, and grandparents, and all this hierarchy. So this is where I found myself as a child, as a growing up person, but we have had 200 years of colonial rule, and if you see from Victorian models, this kind of structure in 19th century is not something that can be codified. So it was criminalized. So now we have a hijra system, but we do not live in the mainstream. We are, I'm sorry?
On the ground.
Yeah, on the ground, we are very marginalized. I'm sorry, I'm going beyond the...
No, it's okay. But the hijra community were like visible or still visible.
Yeah, we still have the community. We have our own language.
Yeah.
Because at a time when we were criminalized, we had to have a language to communicate. And
Criminalized by the government or?
yeah, the then government, which was the Queen. Because according to Victorian models, see, India is a mixed pot of everything. We are the most populous country in the world. Not just now, we've been one of the most populated throughout the human history because the ground is fertile, you know? And when so many people come together, it's bound things to evolve and to become a boiling pot. So we had so much different variations of marriages, of human relationship, of queerness, name it, even the things that we can't name in our so-called English lexicology currently, non-binary, pan or whatever. The things that you can't name existed in India, the forms of existence. So, but it's difficult for us to even codify it now, give it names. Now think of a time in 19th century when we had our little Auntie Victoria who had to codify it. I mean, whose models had to codify it. So, yeah, so it was criminalized. Not just trans people, but a lot of cis people also were criminalized because there were a lot of communities which didn't fall into the respectability of Catholic Church or something. For example, we had a community called as, you know the word thug, what it means in English. He's a thug, means he's someone who's a robber or something like that. Actually, thug is a community in India. They are nomadic communities who move place to place. But somehow, British could not understand how thugs work, or how thugs live. They criminalize their existence. So the word comes from a community name to English lexicology as a robber. So even with hijra people, we are currently living, most hijra people do not have legal existence. That means they do not have any BSN or driving license or education. So they live as living beings in the land called India, but like how cats and dogs live without any legal
in the underground, like living.
Yeah. So that's the current
awful.
reality.
Thank you. Saba?
So it's a complicated question to answer because when I look at history and culture and how it has been perceived throughout history and how it's perceived now, and then you add colonialism to it and the influences of the West, it becomes a really mishmash where you cannot distinguish where it is part of the community that creates this or where it is an influence. And I myself find queerphobia in general something really complicated and complex that goes into really, really deep in our DNA, a certain trauma that came out somewhere, and every one of us is trying to heal it in a certain way. But if I wanted to paint a picture about Iran, of course it's not that difficult from the rest of Middle East, or any other place for that matter, where the tribal community tries to shun or discredit or throw away the people who are not conforming to the norms of a family because it was part of their survival method to create that tribe, and someone who was not part of it, they would throw them away. But what I've experienced as I read the history of Iran and the culture and how I lived it there, even though I must add and say again that it's always changing. is that there's always this consensus that as long as it's hidden, it's fine. So this is the thing that I saw and experienced in Iran growing up, that the whole concept of sex, and then deeper in that, queerness in all its form, is a taboo that is used to confine people and hold them in their specific role in society. For example, the main curse words that we used were really, really highly homophobic. And however we would use, it was either homophobic or it was about someone's mom. So this whole notion of being queer was seen as something that if you do that, you will lose life. You will become shunned from society, and then you will lose everything. So the queer community was always hidden, and there were just some cues about where you could find them. For example, they were always hanging out around the theater houses, because if they were caught by the police because of their makeup, they would say, "I'm just an actor coming from my play." A method that is also was used in Europe as well. But other than that, they lived among us, but as long as they kept it hidden. And this is one of the main things that I find interesting about Iranian culture, especially when we go back in history as well, that they were actually quite tolerable for people who were queer, as long as they kept it hidden and they just had it as part of themselves. They could wear makeup at home or have sex with men, but as long as it's not part of their identity, they were okay with it. And now things are actually changing a lot. This is one of the things that I see happening that we will get to in the next questions. But I see that they are losing the generational war. The current generation, the younger generation, because of the influence of the internet, they are seeing there's nothing wrong with the way that they want to be. And of course, we have this ruthless government who is against anything happy, basically. Being queer is kind of becoming a political resistance among the young people, at least the way that they present themselves. But of course, it has its backlashes in the older generation as well. But the future is non-binary.
Of course, thank you. But was it always the same? Like, I think we had it over about the recent history, but if we go back further, was it always the case, like for queer people not being hidden and not being able to express their queerness and gender identities?
I would say the lines were much less drawn. Of course, there were Sharia law about what is the role of a woman and what is the role of a man, but a man was more free to express themselves however they like than today, for example, I would say. But of course, it was in the past, and it's really hard to distinguish exactly. But the fact that the queer people had a life, and it was known by everyone, and the way that they would talk about it was, if you do this, you will become part of the queers. It showed that the main thing about queerness is not that we will destroy them, or we will not let them live, or we don't want that. It's just that they are a certain part of the community that we feel that they are not as important and as deserving to be alive, to be honest. But they had a life of their own. And they could be part of the community as long as they hide that aspect of themselves.
And were there famous queer people in the history of Iran, or?
I could say almost all rulers were queer.
Yeah.
This is another thing that can be said, that it was a class thing as well. That when you go a higher state and you have wealth, you were allowed to be queer, basically. You were allowed to have sex with young boys. You were allowed to have sex with your slaves. You were allowed to do whatever. Like we have a Shah, Nasiruddin Shah, was at the end of the 19th century when camera was invented. And he done crazy stuff with that camera. that he brought from Europe. And they are all queer-coded, and they are all quite interesting. But also the interesting thing is we don't have access to a lot of the photos that he took. They're all hidden somewhere because they will show something. And when you read history, you understand that when you are a ruler, you were allowed to have a queer experience, and most of them did.
I'm just thinking in my head, like the term queer and all these terms are just recent. Like in your language, just throughout history, did you have like a language for being queer, or people just acted like who they are and that's it? They don't have to put labels or names or...
Yeah, there were no labels in that regard. They see themselves as normal. But the labels that would exist were insults, kind of like queer itself, which was an insult. My favorite is mukhannas. I actually identify as mukhannas, which is a man who puts makeup. This is mukhannas. And I love it. I love mukhannas because,
And this word derived from?
Mu'annas means female. Mukhannas, it's kind of, it's a made-up word,
Yeah.
It's just the same with Jamaica. We don't really know. Well, earlier before I came, I Googled where the origin of queer come from, and it's an unknown source. So the word queer, I was having this conversation with someone, and the word queer is only a word that is being made to include, to have an inclusive community where persons who don't identify as men who have sex with men, but still do have sex with men. It captured the thugs, it captured the trades, it captured the DLs, and it captured the tranny tracers, and it captured the pansexual, it captured everyone. And in order for us to identify the community in general, the word queer arrives. But it's a made-up word that found its ways into different dictionary and different vocabulary across the world. So for me, in Jamaica, the word queer was, when I knew of the word queer, we were using that word as a derogatory term to curse someone, included with the word batiman, mean homo, chichi, fish, tin boom, pan cover, bula, cheese, what else? Sissy, girly, mama's boy. And those things were used as words to derogatorily describe a gay person or someone that they assumed to be gay. For me, I have been looking it up, and I have seen that why are we so we are so clustered and blindfolded of where the word come from, and we need to pay more attention, not so much to the history of where gay and queerness is from, because go back to the beginning of the Bible. Queerness and gayness was always mentioned somewhere in terms of the description of what is written. The storyline tells you that, hey, this person also has sex with the same sex, or also do stuff with the same sex. We talk about Jezebel, and we talk about Jezebel with all these random parties that they have. We talk about Sodom and Gomorrah. It wasn't about gayness, why Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. However, if you look at what was said, even though Saul wanted to give the men his 2 daughters, they didn't want that. They wanted the 2 men that came. But even though it said that, it did not say anything. But based on how sexually motivated or sexually driven and vile the city was, that's the reason why they used it as saying that this was what caused Sodom and Gomorrah to destroy. But leave that alone. That's religious. That's religion. And I really don't like to discuss religion because religion plays a lot along with colonization, the criminalization, the underground, the closet, build the closet that we live in. Because in Jamaica, I didn't know anything about coming out. I know about I'm gay, and if I look back and turn around and look back and turn around and look back and you look at me 3 times, turn around while we are going, then we stop. Then we know that we are family. We know that we cut from the same material. And that's how we know gay people. And that's the sort of nonverbal communication that we do to identify people, as well as within our society, we look too deeply on how we see each other instead of how we can unite our group, our community together as one flag, not separating the colors from the flag and take on each individual and make it. We break the unity, and if we can't keep the unity as a community together, then the outside community will always try to put us in boxes and putting us up against each other. And that's where queerness needs to start to take its focus, and not from the back. Yes, you use the past to educate yourself for the future and to make better choices, but we tend to dwell too long on that.
This brings me to a question about, I'm a bit curious about what triggered you to be active in the groups you've been active with in Jamaica before moving here to the Netherlands.
Okay, what triggered that?
Yeah.
It was within the fact that growing up as a kid, I know that I feel different. When the boys goes out to play football, I go the opposite side to play netball, which is a female sport. When the boys are playing sword fighting, I'm playing dalios, and I have to be the mother. And that triggers a sense of who I am, a concern about why am I different from the guys. And then I had to do study, and I went to Jamaica AIDS Support for Life within its first year of active work as an organization. And I ran into a friend of mine that I was madly in love with. Only thing that we never had any sort of sexual contact. And she was at her last in the hospice. And that caused a revolution for me, where I said, okay, then, if I am a gay boy, I am being beaten. But if you're a woman, you are being preyed on and being infected with something that there's no cure for. I'm going to fight for myself. And fighting for myself give me the purpose of fighting for others, and as well as me fighting for myself, eventually fighting for others. The ones that are not bold enough, and the ones that are not courageous enough to really stand up for themselves in a country that was so homophobic. And Jamaica AIDS Support for Life, I started working there as volunteering as student, going to school, finished high school, then I went there to work. And while working there, we started having more and more persons coming into the organization saying that they are gays, in respect of the fact that they are maybe negative or positive from HIV. It doesn't matter, because we were an organization doing where we have a target group where we educate and testing and try to treat, or what we say, try to control the spread of HIV within the system. That builds up a community where we start to have this once a month meeting. And we realize that people are coming in with different situations, different problems that is outside of HIV, outside of health, but it's more like conflicts. And it was more about safety. So we organized this political organization called JFLAG, where JFLAG now take the political side of it and the security and well-being of others away from healthcare. And with that, we have to create different groups that we have different target groups. So I was also part of the crisis target group where we go into community and grab you. So we have someone who drives, and you have to drive like a maniac. And we drive into your street and we tell you have 5 minutes to get your bag, whatever you can carry, and get out. Jump in the car and we are reversing out, or we are driving forward out. So with that, and then we have this training where we train persons how to speak with the police and make report to the police and ensure that the police write it in the book and not on paper and throw it in the bin, because they do that all the time. Because of colonialism, our laws change, and it's changed from the same queen that changed England. A matter of fact, Jamaica, we were transported there, so we have no knowledge of the Indians that were living there and what was their sexual culture, or the culture that the norms and culture that they grew up in as native to the land. But then England takes over and change the rule. And the ironic thing about that is England changed the rules and the laws around the Western Hemisphere and within the CARICOM, but in England, the law is far way different from what is being in other countries. Because in England, the buggery law has been off their books from before Queen Elizabeth II stepped in. And in Jamaica, we still had the law on our books that they put there. However, our politicians that you also said, a lot of those people of power are also gay. We have prime ministers that we really know that is gay. And not just one. We have two. One female and one male. The female is bisexual, yes, but the male is actually gay. And they will not change the law because of power. So, yeah. I'm rambling.
Yes, okay. Did you know? Yeah, it's actually, we need to know about this really.
And it's hurt because right now I feel this rage to just keep talking and cursing right now.
Yeah.
Because I have to flee from a country where I develop myself, coming from a third world family, and develop myself to a first world, to first class citizen. Third class citizen, move myself up over the years to first class citizen, and still have to run away from it. Because we do have famous people that are publicly known as gay, like the former Dr. Rex Netterford, in which was a professor at the University of the West Indies, and that is known to be gay. And he also was the director for NDTC Dance Theatre Company in Jamaica. And then we also have Peter King, in which was an ambassador for Jamaica to New Zealand, somewhere in Europe. And he was also known as gay. But if someone call you Peter King on the road, you better run, because that's a name for gays. And I was called that once in St. Catherine, and my mom has to get really aggressive towards people, and we get out of the supermarket and get home. As well as we have Brian Williamson, was Canadian Jamaican, well known, and because of the fact that he is gay, he was killed. All of these people were killed.
Yeah, thank you. We mentioned colonialism, different in different stories and places and countries. I would like to get back to you, Hawar, about colonialism and what your awareness about colonialism and its influence in the Middle East and in so many countries and within cultures. What do you think the influence in your back home, when you were back home, like how was the influence there? And were you aware of that influence when you were back home or when you left?
I haven't left quite a long time. I just came 3 months ago, which is great to tell you right away. First-hand example is before I fly to, I still live there, by the way. So before I just fly to Netherlands, there was a bill in the Iraqi parliament to criminalize LGBTQI and even trans people and jail time, even like penalty death for those who are actually will be affiliated with anything queer. So that's the impact. That's the impact. And again, aside from the bill that we see in our lawmakers, there is a social stigma with it and the whole dehumanization of the queer community, that they don't look at queer community as a human, and there's a lot of stigma and people are actually get killed. And only this year we have the cases, more than 2 cases of trans women got killed. I can go ahead and tell you about the impact. They're very dark and very unfortunate and very sad. However, I just wanted to also follow up on what Ariel mentioned, because we really need to bust the myth and tell the world the truth. And if we want to know what is happening now, why these prosecutions happens nowadays in Middle East or in this whole concept called West and
Global South.
Yeah. It's just we have to go back to the history, and the history is not very much different from now. Actually, under Ottoman Empire, which was again another colonized empire in the region, 300 years they colonized Middle East and other countries. There was no law or zero law to criminalize LGBTQI. If anything, when the British and French colonization happened, they came to the Middle East and they saw these communities are so okay with being gender fluid and being non-binary, and homosexuality was not a criminal for 300 years. And so I would say it's the Victorian and the colonial values. They came back and they said, oh my God, like the Middle East and all of these countries, they need reformation. And that's the history. And we have to face that. And they started with, when they colonized my country, Iraq, and the rest of the Middle East, they started to impose laws that still we are actually following, like what you also mentioned, even in Jamaica, in Kurdistan, in Iraq, in Iran. It's adopted because of the colonial power of British and French. And that was part of the Christian Victorian value to say these people are deviant and they're practicing homosexuality. So that's the history, tells us that. And you guys, you can go back to it and do your research, but that's it is. And today we are actually struggling. So of course, I'm not here just to blame the West, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying, like, in order to learn now, we really need to go back and know the truth. And that's how we only can actually move forward. When you said, moving forward doesn't mean cutting the past. We have to know the past and continue. Because, like I said, when I realized in 1755, we had poets talks about same-sex relationship in a romantic way. And you can give a lot of evidence, and I can bring a lot of that. But that was not a criminal, and nowadays it is because of what happened. And so for us to go from here, we really need to understand, but also we need to know this is not to pinpoint blames to anyone. This is about the fact that queerness has always been part of the history and part of the humanity, and it's always been politicized in the name of politician and religion. And that's why we see that, unfortunately, in the West, we think that it's only invented in the West, and it's only the West is actually treating the queer people right. It was not like that. That's a sad news. And it was very different in my part of the world. And now, unfortunately, we have been punished for it, but not only being punished, because there is this point I want to close with it, which is, unfortunately, a lot of queer people from Middle East and from my country comes to this country, and we still, like, I don't know, so many years ago from here, people needed to testimony that they're actually queer. In the States, we have in 90, I think, I'm not sure about the years, 20 or something like that, people had to show explicit sexual evidence to the government to prove that they're gay, you know? And so people coming from our country as a refuge to here, that doesn't mean that. This was always like that in the past, in this part of the world. Or that doesn't mean that because it is criminalized nowadays, the society was used to be like that always. It was very different. And that's my message, basically. We really need to understand the history so we can actually understand how these powers are actually played and will show up differently according to different situations.
Yeah, I shook about when I heard you just said that about the recent criminalization of queer and trans people in Iraq. So that got me to thinking, was that like because the West of politicizing queer rights, like, and putting it in a political agendas to demonize countries in the global West and the Middle East? Was that the thing? Because I think from where I came from, I had like, we were taught that queerness and LGBT and trans people are just Western invention and Western important. And that's perhaps why countries criminalize queer people in the Middle East or global South, because they think they're getting back, like they're taking back what theirs, and they're like revenging themselves from the West. So we are the I don't like this word, but the victims between these two groups, like the politicians in the West and the politicians in the East or in the global South.
Yep.
So they just fighting together and using us as a
Scapegoat.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to say we are the victim, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We really are, in a sense. Not queer people are victim, but we are victimized in that sense that actually they're using these kind of topics, and that's the post-colonial impact. It's not just because the queer people are free in the West. That's why they're like we are actually struggling, because in our countries, yes, they do say is like queerness is very westernized. But it is because these colonial powers still exist in today, and they support the backwarded dictators, governments in our country. They support them.
Yeah.
They support them to keep the legitimacy to continue colonize us in a different way and to say, oh, now we're gonna sell you the idea of freedom, of democracy, and liberation of the queer.
Yeah.
But again, we're way ahead in the history, and that's just a justification to continue the colonized power in those parts of the world. That's my opinion.
But it's also the indoctrination that we go through over the years, because in Jamaica we always said being queer is from the state or from England. It's if you are being gay, you are not originally from Jamaica. This is coming from. These are teachings from overseas, where we call the UK and we call America. So and I'm just using specific names of countries because the West also included Canada, it's also included some other places, but the main place that we get affected by is America and England.
And what do you think about the term pinkwashing?
Pinkwashing is real, even pinkwashing amongst pink.
Yeah.
Even the pink also sometimes when you buy a fabric and you buy a dress and it may be pink, but if the pink is not good quality pink, or it was just a already done things and you wash it against other stuff, the pink comes off on the other one. And sometimes we within our own community pink wash each other by, oh, we are doing stuff for the LGBTQI plus community, but we are only inviting and welcoming when there is a fee at the door, and when it's something that doesn't concern in sex, and then we have everyone come. But the moment it becomes sex or it's becomes something that more free, that you don't have to pay for, then it's like, okay, you cannot come, you cannot be, or you cannot this, because you are not men who have sex with men.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. For people who doesn't know the pinkwashing term, perhaps, yeah, you want to explain what?
Oh, I'm wearing
pinkwashing
pink.
means?
Okay, so pinkwashing was a term that originated early 2010s, which describes a tactic, a political tactic, to, wow, so difficult.
To fund LGBT organization to do their bidding, to set us up against each other and divide
much
us.
better, yeah.
And then at the end of the day, they are not necessarily there for us,
Yeah.
but they are actually against us. Or they use us when it's necessary, and when it's not necessary, you are at the back burner.
Yeah, they portray their liberal laws as freedoms that they have created for the LGBTQIA plus community to give legitimacy to their actions. This is actually so evident in what's happening in Gaza right now, where they try to, it's quite funny, there are these Israeli soldiers who take pictures with their lovers and how they propose and they're going to get married, and they wave LGBTQ flags on the rubble of the land that they just destroyed to say, we are bringing queerness and freedom to this land, but it doesn't exist. Yeah.
Not
Can
in-
they get married there in Israel?
No, they can't get married. That's the funny thing, that Israel doesn't allow gay marriage, and they are not even close in creating a LGBTQIA plus safe community for them.
It's just one place in Israel you can go as gay people.
Yeah, you can just...
You can't go overall
Yeah.
in Israel.
Yeah, no.
No.
It doesn't exist. And
I
they
was
just
told,
use it.
I've never been to Dubai or wherever or in the Middle East, but that's what I was told. When you go to Israel, you can go to Tel Aviv, but you cannot go anywhere else outside of that, because you are placed in one zone. This is a tourist zone, so everything can apply there, but outside of that zone, no, it's native, you cannot.
I think we found the definition of pinkwashing.
And that's
Yeah.
pinkwashing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's it. Yes.
But I
Lisa?
also wanted to say that with all these new laws that is coming up, I think the gay community also need to find the organizations that are working in ensuring that the laws remain either the same or they reverse from criminalize to decriminalize, such as Global Black Gay Man Connect. I was in South Africa for a conference, and while we were in Cape Town, we heard, boom, the law in Uganda, illegal.
Yeah.
And right there and then, we were sitting down in front of Global Fund, World Bank, and all the major funders around the world, and we decided that we are going to talk. The meeting stopped from HIV prevention to LGBT safety. And right after I come back from South Africa, our proposal went through where they withdraw, and I raised the subject. I said, listen, we are sitting in front of you, in which fund all these major governments around the world. Why are you funding a country that you are funding to help a minority group? And if you still fund this country that supposed to help minority group with healthcare benefit, HIV prevention, they will not get it. The only thing that you are going to do when they need to go for HIV treatment and PrEP, they are going to go to prison. You are signing, so you need to take the funding from government institution, government entities, and give it to KP-run organizations such as Prisma, such as what I did for other places in South Africa, such as Gender Dynamics. Before I came back from there, I went and I do a site visit and ensure that they are doing what they said that they're supposed to be doing.
I hate to cut you off,
And
but
we have 2 minutes.
Yeah, we were almost at the end of this edition, and time of our panel. So I would like to thank you all, and we can do a part 2 of this panel where we can have it over other topics and dive deep into the colonial influence on queerness throughout history and other cultures. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone who are here, and thank you for the people at home. Have a good evening.